Beneath clear waters, where light fades to darkness, lies a world where every second matters and mistakes cost lives. 3 underwater caves, 3 final breaths, 3 stories that changed how we explore the depths forever. These are the tales of brave divers who entered the water-filled tunnels beneath the earth and never came back. Devil's Den Divers Tragedy. On March 10th, 2001, Kenny Nelson was just a normal 14-year-old boy, about as tall as 2 iPhone 16s stacked on top of each other. What made this day different? Kenny was headed to Devil's Den Cave with his church group. Was this just another fun trip, or would it become something much worse? Devil's Den Cave wasn't a place for beginners. Hidden in the rocky hills of Arkansas, this cave was known for its confusing tunnels and tight spaces that could trap people inside. Many visitors told stories about strange sounds coming from deep in the cave. Had others gotten lost in there before? The most dangerous part of the cave had a frightening name: Satan's Maze. Picture a jumble of sharp rocks with tiny openings between them. It wasn't just hard to get through, it was like a trap waiting to catch people. The local people said that once you entered Satan's Maze, the cave seemed to control what happened to you. How many people had gone in and never found their way back out? The church group couldn't wait to start exploring. They hiked over the rocky ground, everyone talking and laughing until they reached the cave entrance. For almost everyone there, this was their very first cave adventure. As they walked into the cave, huge rock walls rose up around them, and the passages got narrower. Kenny, one of the youngest kids in the group at just 14, felt a rush of excitement. He pushed ahead, wanting to see more. The group kept moving forward, squeezing through tight spots and climbing over rough rocks. Just when the path seemed to get easier, Kenny saw something interesting: a small opening in the rock wall. How small was it? Just 12 inches wide, about the size of a tablet computer. Most adults couldn't fit through a space that tiny. Through this small gap, Kenny could see an exciting chamber about 15 feet deep. The hidden room seemed to call to him, promising adventure and discovery. The smart choice would have been to turn back, but Kenny's curiosity was too strong. Was this why they called it Satan's Maze? Because it tempted people to make dangerous choices? The saying, "the devil made him do it," seemed to fit what happened next. Kenny felt excited by the challenge. He pushed aside the little voice in his head, telling him to stop. Kenny got down on his stomach and started crawling headfirst into the tiny opening. The rough rock walls scraped against his shoulders as he wiggled forward inch by inch. At first, he just thought it was a tight squeeze. "I can make it," he told himself. But as he pushed deeper into the narrow gap, something changed. The walls seemed to press in even tighter. Kenny suddenly realized he was in real trouble. His heart started beating faster as the truth hit him. He was stuck in a space barely wider than his body, with rock pressing in from all sides. Halfway through the narrow opening, Kenny's body shifted. Suddenly, he couldn't move at all. He was stuck on his side, wedged tight between the rock walls. He tried to push forward. Nothing happened. He tried to back up. He couldn't move an inch. His arms were pinned in an awkward position, and he couldn't free them. With each panicked breath he took, the rocks seemed to squeeze tighter around his chest. A terrible thought hit Kenny. "I've made a huge mistake." He was trapped, unable to move forward or backward in the tiny space. His friends in the church group rushed to help. They pulled on his feet and tried to guide him, but nothing worked. Kenny remained firmly stuck in the rock's grip. The group quickly realized this was beyond what they could handle. They needed experts with the right tools and skills. Some of the group ran out of the cave to call for help. Within hours, park rangers and local cave rescue teams arrived. The rescue operation began immediately. Kenny's horizontal position made it nearly impossible for rescuers to reach him effectively. His body was wedged too tightly, and every attempt to pull him out failed. His chest ached as his ribs pressed against the rock. His spine twisted painfully under the pressure. His legs, now useless in the nearly horizontal position, couldn't help him push free. Kenny's mind raced as he fought the growing sense of suffocation. His anxiety rose with each passing minute. The tight space allowed very little air to reach him. The cave's darkness seemed to close in further as time passed. The rescue teams tried different approaches. They attempted to widen the opening slightly. They used ropes and harnesses. Nothing worked. The unforgiving rock held Kenny firmly in its grasp. His position deep within the narrow crevice made any attempt to get ropes around him nearly impossible. The rescuers crouched in the tight passage, trying to maneuver the ropes into place, but the confined space left little room to work. Each tug on the rope caused Kenny to wince in pain as the jagged rocks dug into his sides. Hours passed with little progress. The rescue team tried different angles and methods, but Kenny remained stuck, the crevice refusing to release its hold on him. Time was becoming a serious concern. The rescuers' headlamps cast eerie shadows on the cave walls. Their voices echoed as they called for more equipment. Sweat dripped from their foreheads as they worked in the cramped space. By evening, Kenny had been trapped for over 6 hours. His body temperature was dropping in the cool cave air. His strength was fading fast. The rescuers could see the fear in his eyes when their lights shone on his face. Finally, someone suggested applying grease to help ease Kenny's body out of the crevice. They coated him with as much as they could and encouraged him to move sideways. Slowly, agonizingly, Kenny inched forward, every shift of his body sending sharp waves of pain through his chest, back, and legs. The friction was unbearable, but with the help of the rescuers pulling from above, he began to slide free inch by inch. After nearly 5 long, torturous hours of pain and struggle, Kenny was finally freed from the crevice. Exhausted, battered, and sore, he stood up, his legs weak beneath him. But despite the agony, he managed to walk out of the cave on his own, a survivor of one of the most terrifying experiences of his life, as if he had danced with the devil and lived to tell the tale. The Devil's Den incident of March 10th, 2001, changed Kenny Nelson forever. The 14-year-old who entered the cave that morning was not the same person who emerged that night. His brush with death in Satan's maze taught him a hard lesson about respecting nature's dangers. Local authorities later installed stronger warnings at the cave entrance, with Kenny's story serving as a powerful reminder of the cave's deadly potential. While Kenny survived his ordeal, many others have not been so lucky in similar situations. His story stands as a warning to all adventurers. Sometimes, curiosity can lead us straight into the devil's hands. While Kenny Nelson walked away from Devil's Den with scars and a story to tell, halfway across the world, the crystal waters of Egypt's Red Sea held no such mercy for their victims. The blue hole of Dahab stands as a perfect circle of deep blue against turquoise waters, beautiful, inviting, and deadly. What makes this underwater sinkhole truly chilling isn't just its body count, but that one diver's final descent was captured entirely on camera, recording a tragedy that would serve as a haunting warning to explorers everywhere. Blue hole of Dahab, Yuri Lipski. Dropping like a stone, a young diver fell 91 meters to the bottom of Egypt's blue hole in just 3 minutes. His last moments weren't seen by witnesses. They were recorded on his own camera in one of diving's scariest videos ever made. On April 28, 2000, the hot sun shone over Dahab as Yuri Lipski, a 22-year-old Russian who had been a diving teacher for only 1 year, got ready for what would be his last dive. The blue hole had already killed many divers, but Yuri thought he could beat its dangers. Yuri asked many skilled divers to come with him. They all said no. "You can't do this without weeks of getting ready," they told him. "You need special gear for going that deep." The perfect blue circle in the sea had trapped so many divers that people called it the diver's cemetery. Yuri didn't listen to any warnings. He gave himself just 2 days to get ready for a dive that needed careful planning. With only basic gear that wasn't right for deep diving, He put on a camera that would later show exactly how the blue hole takes lives. The blue hole sits just a few kilometers from Dahab, right next to the shore. This huge natural sinkhole drops more than 130 meters straight down, with sides that slope down and then suddenly fall off a cliff that plunges over 1,000 meters deep. Locals call it the Divers' Cemetery for good reason. Between 130 and 200 divers have died there in just 10 years. It's known as one of the deadliest dive spots on Earth. Did Yuri really understand how dangerous it was? We may never know. What we do know is that his dive would soon turn into something terrifying. At around 5 p.m., Yuri entered the water, wearing only his regular diving gear and a camera attached to his head. His video shows other divers in the water nearby, but Yuri made one deadly mistake. He wasn't carrying an extra air tank, which was absolutely necessary for this kind of dive. Without that extra tank, Yuri faced a serious danger called nitrogen narcosis. This happens when too much nitrogen builds up in a diver's body at deep depths. It makes divers feel drunk underwater. They can't think clearly, and often don't even realize anything is wrong. The deeper you go, the worse it gets, and Yuri was heading straight down. As Yuri went deeper, he slowly moved away from the other divers. The sunlight grew darker as he sank, while his camera kept recording everything. By the time he reached just 10 meters deep, his lungs were getting only half the air they would at the surface. At the same time, dangerous nitrogen was building up in his body. For such a deep dive, Yuri needed a special mix of gases to breathe, not just regular air. This is why most divers are told never to go below 40 meters. But Yuri kept going down, and he wasn't even checking how deep he was. Then something went terribly wrong. Yuri began to sink faster and couldn't stop himself. He tried to inflate his buoyancy vest BCD to make himself float, but it wasn't working. He was too heavy, and gravity pulled him down like an anchor. As he dropped deeper, the water pressure squeezed his lungs harder. Panic began to set in. The nitrogen building up in his brain started making him confused, like being drunk underwater. His thinking became cloudy just when he needed it most. Falling past 80 meters, Yuri made one last desperate try. He kept pressing the button to add more air to his vest, but it was already completely full. Suddenly, the pressure was too much. His vest burst. Air hissed out all around him, and any chance of survival disappeared. At 5:11 p.m., Yuri hit the bottom at 91 meters deep, landing face down on the seafloor. His camera, still attached to his head, stopped recording. The blue hole had claimed another victim, but that wasn't the end of the story. About a week later, on May 5th, a local Egyptian expert diver named Tarek Omar went into the blue hole to find Yuri's body. In just 7 minutes, Yuri had gone from standing on a sunny beach to lying dead at the bottom of one of the world's deadliest dive spots, and his camera recorded it all. Tarek Omar was known as the person everyone called when divers got in trouble around Dahab. He got the call after Yuri never came back up from his dive. Though Tarek always hopes to save people, most times his job ends up being to bring back bodies. Tarek spent his first day carefully searching the huge dive site. The blue hole is massive, and finding someone in its depths isn't easy. When he finally found Yuri lying still on the ocean floor, it was clear the young Russian had been dead for many hours. The local diving community calls Tarek the grave diver because he has recovered over 20 bodies from the blue hole. Each time he goes down, he faces the same dangers that killed the divers he's searching for. On the second day, Tarek came back to bring up Yuri's body. Right away, he saw a major mistake. Yuri had about 12 kilograms of lead weights on his belt. This was way too much weight for safe diving. His buoyancy vest was torn open, and he had gone down with only 12 liters of air, not nearly enough for such a deep dive. Then Tarek noticed something attached to Yuri's head, a camera. At first, he thought it must be broken. Regular cameras aren't made to work so deep underwater, but he took it anyway, along with all of Yuri's gear and his body. Tarek thought his job was finished after he handed everything over to the local officials. Then something unexpected happened. the camera wasn't destroyed after all. Even more surprising, the video inside was still there. Tarek became the first person to watch what would later become one of the most viewed diving accident videos ever recorded. Right there on the small screen, he witnessed exactly how the blue hole had claimed its latest victim, from Yuri's own point of view. The footage showed every mistake, every panicked moment, and the final tragic seconds as Yuri sank to his death. What started as one diver's record of an ambitious dive had become a powerful warning to others about the deadly consequences of overconfidence. The video showed exactly what Tarek feared. Yuri died because of three main problems. He carried too much weight, his air vest broke, and worst of all, he got severe nitrogen narcosis that confused his thinking. But for Tarek, watching the terrible video wasn't the hardest part. What truly bothered him was knowing that Yuri's mother, who was staying in Dahab and had called Tarek to find her missing son, would end up seeing it too. Tarek later told people that if he had known what was on the camera, he would have flooded it, meaning he would have destroyed it by letting water in. He wanted to protect everyone, especially Yuri's mother, from having to watch those final terrible moments. Sadly, the camera was given back to Yuri's family, along with his other belongings. The thought that his mother had to watch her own son drown on video still bothers Tarek deeply to this day. The footage that Tarek wished had never been seen has now been viewed millions of times online. It serves as a stark reminder of the blue hole's deadly power and how quickly things can go wrong, even for diving instructors. Tarek remembered meeting Yuri before the tragic dive, when the young Russian was looking for someone to dive with him. Just like the other experienced divers, Tarek strongly warned him not to try it. He knew all too well how dangerous the blue hole was. But Yuri, like many overconfident divers before him, ignored these warnings. In a sad twist of fate, he became one of the most well-known divers in history, not for his achievements, but for his final moments captured on video. While Yuri's story has frightened many people away from diving, it has also served as a powerful warning lesson in the diving community for more than 20 years. Today, visitors to the Blue Hole will see the rocky cliffside near the entrance, covered with tombstones and small memorials for those who never returned from its depths. One of the most noticeable markers reads, Yuri Lipski, October 1st, 1977, April 28th, 2000. After Yuri's death, diving authorities worldwide incorporated his story into safety training. His final dive video became required viewing in advanced diving courses, showing how quickly things can go wrong. The Egyptian government placed stronger restrictions on who could dive the Blue Hole, requiring special certifications and local guides familiar with the site's dangers. Despite these measures, the Blue Hole continues to claim lives, with over 200 divers estimated to have died in its depths. Tarek Omar continues his grim work as the area's primary recovery diver, having now brought up more than 30 bodies. Each new tragedy serves as a powerful reminder of Yuri's lesson. No diver, no matter how confident, should ever underestimate nature's power or ignore the warnings of those who know its dangers. While Yuri Lipski's camera documented his final moments in Egypt's Blue Hole, another cave system thousands of miles away would soon claim lives without leaving any visual record. From the open waters of the Red Sea, we now journey to the dense forests of North Florida, where crystal springs hide deadly underwater tunnels. At Little River Springs, the calm surface gives no hint of the dangers below. Here, two experienced divers would make fatal mistakes, showing that even in America's most beautiful swimming spots, underwater caves show no mercy to those who enter unprepared. Little River Springs Cave Tragedy. It's every diver's worst fear, having to leave your buddy behind to save yourself. On November 26, 2003, a cool Wednesday afternoon in Florida, two friends arrived at Little River Spring. Jerry Dwayne Beats was 42 years old. His diving partner, Kane Overfield, was 46. Both men knew what they were doing underwater. They had trained in cave diving for more than 2 years and had explored this same underwater cave system between 15 and 25 times before. Their plan for the day was simple. They would dive for 80 minutes using underwater scooters to help them move faster through the cave. Like all good divers, they planned to turn around when they had used just 1/3 of their air. This would leave plenty of air for the return trip and for any emergencies. The two friends had no idea that something would soon go terribly wrong deep beneath the surface. They carefully completed their final safety checks. Both men had double air tanks filled to the top. Their backup lights were securely attached. Their guideline reels were ready to use. This guideline, a strong, thin cord that divers follow to find their way out of underwater caves, can mean the difference between life and death. Losing the guideline in a silt-out is one of the scariest things that can happen to a cave diver. A silt-out happens when a diver's movements stir up the fine mud and sand from the cave floor. This creates a thick cloud that can make it impossible to see even your hand in front of your face. Without a guideline to follow by touch, a diver can become completely lost in the darkness. With all their equipment double-checked and ready, Jerry and Kane slipped beneath the clear surface of Little River Spring. The peaceful waters closed over their heads as they began their journey into the underwater labyrinth below. The water at the entrance was crystal clear. Sunlight danced through the water, lighting up the white limestone walls around them. Jerry and Kane could see perfectly as they started their dive. As they swam deeper, the wide cave entrance narrowed into a tunnel. The bright sunlight from above quickly disappeared. The walls of the cave moved closer together, creating a tighter passage. Their powerful dive lights cut through the growing darkness. At about 40 feet deep, they followed the main route that would take them deeper into the Little River Cave system. The peaceful spring above gave no hint of the complex maze of tunnels that lay ahead of them. Even though many divers had been through these caves before, the system was still very dangerous, even for experts like Jerry and Kane. Their underwater scooters made a soft humming sound as they moved through the narrow hallways. They were careful to keep their fins away from the bottom to avoid stirring up the sediment. In some places, the cave walls seemed to squeeze in around them. Then the passage would open up into bigger rooms where pockets of air were trapped against the ceiling. They passed through familiar spots like the dome room, a huge chamber where the sound of their breathing seemed to echo. So far, everything was going exactly as they had planned. Neither man had any reason to think this dive would be different from their many previous visits to Little River. Eventually, they reached a spot called the Well Casing, a vertical passage that gets narrower before it leads deeper into the cave. Right at this point, Jerry Beats suddenly stopped swimming. Kane Overfield, who was slightly ahead, didn't notice at first that his friend had stopped. When he finally looked back, he saw Jerry floating motionless in the water. Jerry's dive light was pointing at something, but Kane couldn't tell what had caught his attention. Kane used hand signals to ask, "Are you okay?" Jerry gave the okay sign in response, but something didn't seem right about his behavior. Jerry's movements were strangely slow. Kane signaled that they should keep going, and Jerry nodded his head, but very slowly. Not sure what else to do, Kane turned back toward the guideline and moved his scooter forward, heading deeper into the cave. After traveling about 200 to 300 feet further, Kane looked back to check on his partner. Jerry was nowhere to be seen. A feeling of fear began to grow inside Kane. Something was very wrong. Kane immediately turned his scooter around and began following the guideline back, using the hand-over-hand technique that all cave divers are taught. He was careful never to let go of the line. It was his only way out of the cave. As Kane got closer to the well casing, he saw something that made his heart sink. The water was filled with thick, cloudy silt. This silt out had turned the once clear water into a blinding fog. He couldn't see anything, not even his own hand. Kane stayed perfectly still in the water, carefully looking for any sign of light from Jerry's dive lamp. He reached his arm out into the murky water and suddenly bumped into something solid. It was Jerry. Kane felt a rush of relief as he grabbed his friend's arm. Jerry was still moving, and didn't seem to be panicking. This was a good sign, but they weren't safe yet. Kane needed to secure his scooter before it could float away in the current. He let go of Jerry for just a few seconds while he clipped his scooter to the guideline. When Kane reached out again to grab Jerry, he was gone. In those few critical seconds, Jerry had disappeared. The silt cloud had gotten even worse, and now the visibility was completely zero. Kane couldn't see anything at all in any direction. Kane waved his arm through the dark water in all directions, feeling for anything. There was nothing. No touch of Jerry, no flash from his light, no movement at all. Kane banged on his metal air tank 3 times. This is the underwater signal that means emergency, and waited for a response. Nothing came back. No answering knocks. No light. Just silence. Kane checked his air gauge. His supply was running dangerously low, and they had already stayed in the cave longer than their planned turnaround time. With no sign of his diving partner, Kane faced a terrible choice. Following the guideline out of the cave was his safest option, but it meant leaving Jerry behind in the darkness. Kane stopped moving and listened hard for any sign, a tap on a tank, the sound of moving equipment, but heard only silence. With his air supply getting lower each minute, Kane knew he had to move. Hand over hand, he pulled himself along the guideline, carefully avoiding his scooter so he wouldn't stir up more silt. The water stayed cloudy and thick until he finally started getting closer to the cave entrance, where it began to clear. As soon as the water cleared enough to see, Kane stopped swimming and turned back. Was Jerry following behind him? Kane knocked on his tank again, one last time, hoping for any response. The echoing silence gave him his answer. Jerry was still lost in the darkness. Kane took a deep breath to steady his racing heart and turned back toward the exit. What else could he do with his air running low? Every cave diver knows the brutal truth. You can't save your partner if you die trying. Meanwhile, deep in the cave, Jerry had become separated from the life-saving guideline. How quickly can things go wrong in a silt out? In just seconds, one small error can turn deadly. Completely lost in the thick darkness, Jerry couldn't find the guideline no matter which way he reached. The cave had become a black void where every direction felt the same. Each movement he made only stirred up more silt, making his situation even worse. His breathing grew faster and heavier as panic began to take over his mind. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, his underwater scooter suddenly failed. Now Jerry had no help fighting against any water current. How would he find his way out before his air ran out? The nose of Jerry's scooter had become stuck in soft red clay at the bottom of the cave. Could his situation get any worse? With zero visibility, no way to move quickly, and no reference point, Jerry was completely alone in the underwater darkness. His air supply was running out with alarming speed, each panicked breath using up more of his precious gas. The stress of the situation only made things worse. His racing heart and frightened body demanded more oxygen with every second. Jerry tried to calm himself down. He needed to think clearly. Maybe he could retrace his path back to the guideline, but there was no path to follow, just complete darkness in every direction. He turned slowly in the water, trying desperately to recognize any feature of the cave that might guide him. It was useless. He was deep inside the earth, far from the surface, with no way to swim straight up to safety. His only hope now was finding the guideline again, or somehow crossing paths with Kane. But with each passing minute, his air tanks emptied further. How much time did Jerry have left before making his final breath underwater? Back at the spring, Kane finally reached his decompression stop. He hovered in the shallow water, banging on his tank again and again, hoping for any sign of Jerry. Would his friend somehow appear from the depths? After completing his required safety stop, Kane surfaced and quickly looked around. Jerry should be here waiting for him. Had he somehow made it out first? But the surface of Little River Spring was empty. No Jerry, no bubbles, nothing. A wave of panic surged through Kane. He rushed to shore, shouting for help. his voice echoing across the water. How could this happen on what should have been a routine dive? Other divers at the spring quickly understood the emergency. Within minutes, they assembled a rescue team and entered the cave. They followed the guideline with extreme care, passing the well casing, moving through the dome room, and continuing into the deeper parts of the system. Then, at the far end of an area called the Florida Room, a staggering 1,200 feet from the entrance, they found him. Jerry was floating motionless in the water. His mouthpiece had fallen from his mouth. His regulator hoses drifted uselessly in the current. His hands hung limp at his sides. The rescue had come too late. His eyes were still half open behind his mask, staring emptily into the darkness that had claimed him. One rescue diver quickly pressed a spare regulator into Jerry's mouth. Was there any chance he could still be alive? The diver turned on the air, but it was already far too late. The team carefully clipped Jerry's body to the guideline and began the long, solemn journey back to the surface. What had started as a routine dive for two friends had ended in tragedy, with only one returning alive. Authorities were called immediately. Later that day, a specialized recovery diver went back into the cave system to bring Jerry's body to the surface. How would the recovery team explain to Jerry's family that he had died alone in the darkness, separated from his partner and from the thin line that would have led him to safety? Kane's scooter was found exactly where he had left it, carefully clipped to the guideline. Jerry's scooter was discovered deeper inside the cave system, its nose still buried in the red clay where it had become stuck. Why had Jerry moved away from the guideline? This question would haunt Kane forever. The cause of death was painfully clear. Jerry had simply run out of air. Lost in the twisting maze of underwater tunnels with no way to find his path to safety, he had died alone in the darkness. How long had he searched for the guideline before his final breath? In cave diving, one rule stands above all others. Always maintain contact with the guideline. Always. It only takes one moment of separation to turn a routine dive into a disaster. Just a few feet of lost visibility, and a beautiful underwater cave transforms into a deadly trap. For Jerry Beets, that one fatal mistake had sealed his fate. 3 caves, 3 stories, 3 powerful reminders of nature's unforgiving power. From Kenny Nelson's narrow escape in Devil's Den, to Yuri Lipski's recorded descent into Egypt's Blue Hole, to Jerry Beets' lonely death in Little River Springs, each story shows how quickly adventure can become tragedy. These tales aren't meant to stop exploration, but to teach respect for forces greater than ourselves. The line between life and death in these hidden worlds is often just a guideline, a breath of air, or a single decision made under pressure. For those still drawn to these dangerous places, let these stories serve as both warning and guide. The Earth's most beautiful secrets often hide in its most dangerous depths, waiting silently for those brave or foolish enough to seek them out.